Hey guys, welcome back. So today, brought home the 6,000 watt generator made by AllPower. This one is powered by propane only. It is not a tri-fuel setup. And this one I don't know much about. A local subscriber had picked this up, I think either from a friend or a neighbor, after it stopped working, and he offered it to me for $100, so I took him up on it. Anyway, when I went to go pick it up, I could tell there were issues with the engine. You know, going into it, I had assumed maybe the regulator, but the engine, when pulling it over, had little to no compression, and now the recoil isn't grabbing the cup at all. So I think I'm gonna start by just getting this recoil assembly off. We'll see what's going on under there. And then I want to get the spark plug out, pull the engine over, see if the piston is moving, and just go from there. So let me get you set up a little bit better and get going on this. Well, that's a problem. The entire assembly here is broken, so not an issue. I've got more. I think I'll start by vacuuming this out. There's a bunch of leaves in here. We'll give this one a try. This is from a Predator generator, but like this one, it's just a clone of a Honda GX390. So this part should be interchangeable. Yeah, very little compression, if any, but I do hear the piston going up and down. At least I think I do, so let's take a peek. Okay, good. Hopefully you could see that, but the piston, it is going up and down. So let's just throw the compression tester on there and see what we get. Nothing. So, we definitely have no compression. Piston's going up and down. It might just be a valve issue, so let's get that cover off and take a look at the valves. It's on there. that is one stuck valve cover. It's probably not a good thing. Okay. Well, that is a problem. This is the intake valve and the exhaust valve. So the exhaust valve is kind of halfway off and the intake is completely off. And I can tell it's a worn pushrod guide. I've seen this before. Not a great design. This is a clone of a Honda and is actually a Honda design, but this metal plate here is what holds the push rods in place and holds the valves in place. So if this plate here fails, then the rocker, it's allowed to rotate out of place, and this is what happens. But this should be an easy fix. So let's loosen these jam nuts here. We'll just probably remove the rockers altogether because we need to get better access to this plate and replace it with a new one. Just putting this here to help prevent losing anything in the engine, like one of these nuts or the rotator cap, which maybe isn't a rotator cap. Not sure. But we'll leave it there for now. There we go. That was really tight. Push rods could be bent. We'll check those. That one actually looks pretty good. Yeah, push rods look to be good. This is a rotator cap, and you need to put that back. A lot of people make that mistake. They leave the cap off, and then the valve does not contact the stem properly, leading to damage. And that's it. This cheap little $5 part is what caused this generator to lose compression. And this is an easy fix if caught in time. What can happen and does happen is that valves get bent, broken, and even dropped into the engine, in which case the whole engine is trashed. But I think we caught this one in time, So let me pause it here. I'm going to look around. I think I might have a new one of these. Otherwise, I definitely have a used one that's in good condition. So yeah, let me take a look and see what I have. Yeah, I don't have a new one, but I do have a used one from a 420cc Predator engine, and the pushrod guide should be interchangeable. So if this one's in good shape, we'll just move it over and we should be good to go. Yeah, this one looks to be good. Not sure what that is. But I see a lot of it. I don't know. Maybe a bug? I think that's all of it. Gonna double check the torque spec on this. I don't have the specs for this exact engine, but I do have a couple manuals for Honda clones, and I think they specify about 200 inch-pounds on these studs, but I'm just gonna double check. Yeah, according to the manual, it should be 24 Newton meters, which is 212 inch-pounds. Going to flip the push rods around. This was the section of the push rod that was rubbing against the old plate, and you can see there is a bit of wear. But if I flip it around, I think that'll prevent this from happening again. I'll do the same thing to this push rod, just reverse the direction of it. I'm going to rotate the engine, make sure it's on the tappet. And it is. Okay, got them both set pretty much at 0 clearance. So we'll set the clearance in a minute on this engine. I think it's between 4 and 6 thousandths on the intake and 6 and 8 on the exhaust. But let's just pull it over like this. I'll throw the spark plug in real quick, or actually the compression tester, and see if we have compression. Oh yeah, I can feel it. We're at, I'd say about 35 psi, which is low. It has a compression release. It should be closer to 60, but that exhaust valve is tight, and that's going to let too much compression out. So let me loosen it a bit. We'll try this again. Let's try it like that. Yeah, there we go. We're at 60 psi exactly. So I think we're going to be good. Let's set these valves properly and button it back up and try starting it. To set the clearance, you should be on top dead center, just a touch past top dead center on the compression stroke. And a lot of people don't realize the piston comes to the top twice. Once it's the compression stroke, the other time it's the exhaust stroke. And you'll see valve overlap when that's happening. You don't want to set the valves on that stroke because you'll be setting them wrong. The foolproof way to do this, though, is to just pull the engine over until one of the valves is open. So right now the exhaust is open, which means we can set the intake. And that is pretty foolproof, so I recommend doing it that way if you're not sure. And the intake should be between 4 and 6 thousandths. I'm going to aim right in the middle at 5. If anything, I'd rather have it a little loose than a little tight. That feels good. Four thousandths fits. Five feels pretty good, has a bit of drag. And the 6 does not fit. So that intake, it's right at 5 thousandths. That is fine. So let's turn the engine over until the intake opens. And we'll set that exhaust to 7. Let's see where it's at. This is a 6. Yep, that's a loose. Try the 7, loose, 8, loose. All right, let's check the exhaust. 6/1000 of an inch, that fits just fine. What is this, a 7? 7 has a lot of drag, and an 8 does not fit, so I would call that good. So the valves, they're set. Just put a little oil in here. It looks pretty dry, so I don't think this has been run in quite a while. And that theoretically is it. The engine should start and run, assuming everything else is good. So let's get it outside, get it started, see how the engine sounds, and test the generator output. Pretty much ready to go. I've got 6,000 watts on standby, the kilowatts plugged in. But even though this says 6,000 watts, this is not a 6,000 watt generator. It is a 5,000 watt generator, so I'm not gonna load it to 6,000 watts, at least not right away. I might try it because it is a 13 horse engine, so it should handle, I would think, the 6,000 watts. You know, whether the power head and the circuit breakers are gonna like it, I don't know. But let's get the propane connected. So far, so good. Just purging the air from the system, so it should be ready to start. I guess let's check the oil. It's a little low. So I'm going to add some oil, and then I'll try starting it. That should be good. I'm going to change it anyway. Just wanted to make sure it had enough. Well, considering where we started, we are miles ahead. It took a few pulls, but once started, the engine sounded good, but it was running fast. Somebody at some point, I think, cranked up the tension on that governor spring, so I backed it off, brought the engine speed down to 62 Hertz, and then load tested it. Under a 3,000 watt load, it held right at 60 Hertz, brought it up to the max of 5,000 watts, and the engine speed was holding just fine at 58 Hertz. And then I exceeded it. I went to 6,000 watts and the engine kept running. It sounded pretty good, but it was surging a bit. I think ultimately the regulator might be the limitation as far as what this engine can do. But yeah, not too bad. But I did notice a problem over here. A bunch of oil came out on the ground, and I think it's coming from this valve cover. So maybe it's just a bad seal, or I didn't put it on the right way. So we'll double check that. And I think once that's done, mechanically and electrically we'll be at 100%. Really just need to deal with everything else. There is a lot of rust here, so this is going to need a bit of paint. And I want to get a battery installed, test out the electric start. But for now, I'm going to roll this inside, get the oil changed while it's hot. Yeah, there's some metallic in that oil. I don't like seeing that, but yeah, it's hard to say if there's a problem here. Could be the first oil change this has ever had, and there was some wear on that pushrod guide, so yeah, not sure, but we've got some good oil in there now. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look bad. But the breather is definitely bad. There's a bunch of electrical tape on it, and it's torn right there. I mean, that's not where the oil was coming from. It was definitely the cover. Yeah, it doesn't feel bad, the seal. But I think I have a new one of these, so we'll just swap it out. I know this one was stuck pretty badly onto the engine, so it might just be time for a new one. Actually, I didn't have a new one. Had a used one, but it's not quite the same, so I'm just going to try reseating this, and we'll give this one another shot. All right, we'll give that a shot. And while we're here, I'm going to get that replaced. I have this part from Generac, which should be compatible with this. I'm going to start this again, let it run for like 10, maybe 15 minutes, and see how it does. I've kind of parked it right next to the oil stain that it made earlier. So, yeah, I think it'll be pretty obvious if it is leaking, but I have a feeling I just didn't tighten it down enough. Maybe not. It's not starting for some reason, so I think getting the electric start working just moved up in the priority list. I'm going to clean up these terminals, we'll drop a battery in there, and try it that way. Okay, well, the electric start works fine, but the generator, it is not starting. As far as I can tell, still have compression for sure. And I can smell the propane, so I think maybe we have an issue with spark. All right, I rolled it in the garage just so we could see a little better if it has spark. Very weak spark. So I'm not sure what's going on. It could be a bad coil, maybe a bad boot, bad plug, or something's grounding the coil out. So I'm going to double check the plug gap. When I had the plug out earlier, the gap looked small, and on propane it should be smaller than normal. Usually this would be 30 thousandths, but with propane I'd say between 20 and 25 would be normal. So yeah, let's take a look. Got good spark on that plug. So I'm not sure about this one as far as what's going on. Let's get the other spark tester out. That one, it actually has to jump a gap of 1/4 inch. And that's really testing the voltage to see if it's high enough to jump the gap when under compression. I'm not sure what to think on this one. The spark, it's a little intermittent. It's a little slow to start sparking, but once it does, it seems to be fairly consistent. So I'm going to check the ohms of the secondary coil. I haven't looked up the value on this one in particular, but I think it should be around 6,000 ohms. So we'll go through the spark plug wire. Yeah. Seems decent, so I don't think it's spark. The plug is sparking, it can jump the gap. Yeah, it was a little weak looking on the light, but I don't think spark's the issue. Let's try starting it again. I wish I could take credit for this one, but I didn't really fix anything here. But it starts. So the only thing that's really changed is that the engine is fully cooled down at this point. So maybe there is a coil issue when it's hot. We'll have to test that some more. But for now, let's roll this back outside. We'll get it running again, hopefully, and see if that oil leak has stopped. There's no spark. It's maybe jumped the gap once when I just turned it over, and that is it. So, yeah, maybe an oil sensor issue. I'm not sure. The driveway is not 100% level. And yeah, there's no indicator here if that's the issue. So I'm going to unplug the black wire coming from the oil module and see if we get spark back. And that would be a no. I saw maybe 2 sparks, and that's not enough to start the engine. So, yeah, I don't think we have too many options, although this wire right here is probably from the ignition switch going down to the coil. So let's unplug that as well. See if that makes any difference. Nope. The spark, it's intermittent at best. And that's with the oil module and the kill from the ignition unplugged. So there's nothing grounding that coil out. So I think we have a bad coil. To get to the ignition coil, I need to pull off this blower housing, and I can't do that unless I get the air box off and potentially the carburetor as well. So we'll get this off, we'll loosen the bolts from the blower housing and see if we can't squeeze it out of there. Yeah, it might come off. That gap looks pretty big between the flywheel and the magnet. It's supposed to be about, I think, 10 thousandths. That looks to be about twice that. So, yeah, let's just check the clearance, see how big that gap is. Well, that was 20 thousandths. Yeah, 24 thousandths fits just fine too. So I think I'm going to leave the coil and decrease that gap, see if that fixes the issue. Yeah, the clearance is much better now. So that's probably all it was. Let's double check the spark, see if it's any stronger. Much better. That was much better. So I'm going to leave this coil here. I don't think it's bad based on what I saw with the gap. So I guess before putting it all back together, I noticed the anti-surge spring. It is not connected to the carburetor. So we'll get that fixed, reassemble everything, and then bring it outside to see if that oil leak is fixed. Okay, that's promising. I don't want to call it fixed, but it is starting, at least now, consistently without issues. So, yeah, I think I need to get this back outside, run it at least for 10 or 15 minutes, check for oil leaks, and shut it down, let it heat soak a bit, and then try restarting it. And hopefully, this spark issue is a thing of the past. Let's try this again. Hopefully it starts this time, and I'll run it for at least 10 minutes with a 3,000 watt load, and hopefully have no oil leaks. Okay, good. I think we're out of the woods on this one. It started, ran just fine, and handled a 3,000 watt load for just over 10 minutes. And more importantly, there's no leak anymore from the valve cover. So I think the first time I put that cover back on, I just didn't tighten it down enough. So at this point, I'd say we're 100% mechanically and electrically. Really, the only thing I need to do is clean this up. There's a lot of rust on this generator. I wouldn't say it's terrible, but yeah, you can tell it's been left outside. So we'll get this inside, try to clean this stuff up, and I also need to secure that battery. I don't think I'm going to go too crazy painting this up. It really isn't that bad, with the exception of these panels up here. I think the rest of it has very minor rust issues. You know, a little spot right there, a little bit under the battery, and some right there. Of course, the wheels have some rust, but you know, I'm not trying to make this perfect. I just want to clean it up a bit, probably get the worst of it taken care of. So, you know, I haven't decided yet if I'm just going to remove these altogether or try to paint them up. But, you know, the rust is pretty bad. It goes under the stickers. So those would have to be removed and painted black, which I'm not sure is going to look much better than not having them there at all. So I'm going to get those off. We'll take a look to see what it looks like, get the battery off. The starter recoil, I did find the parts I needed to fix it, but I kind of like that one better. So I'm going to leave that one there. Anyway, let's start getting this thing apart and prepping it for a bit of paint. Yeah, I don't think that looks very good without that at all. So I'm going to temporarily kind of hang that back on there. We'll get the heat gun out, try to get the sticker off. We'll do the same on both sides and just keep going. Those panels came out pretty well, but to be honest, that first coat of paint you saw me put on there did not dry so well. So I'm not sure why that was. It was supposed to be a satin black, but I put the black primer on first and then I put the satin on, and it dried very uneven, meaning some spots were gloss, others were flat, and everywhere in between. So I ended up sanding it again, and this time I put flat black on, and the finish seems to be a lot better. So I think we're just about ready to get this thing together. It's been cleaned up. You know, it's not perfect. It does need a little bit more work, but you know, it's looking pretty good. And the wheels as well. I did wire wheel them, and the majority of that rust came off. This strap's a little bit long, but I think it'll work out. Well, guys, that's pretty much it. I mean, this one was a fairly easy fix. It just needed a new pushrod guide. And luckily, it didn't take out the valves when that guide failed, because that can happen, but this was not the case. Anyway, once that was fixed, kind of got thrown for a loop with the spark issue. I'm not sure how the coil got gapped the way that it was, because it would have never run reliably. So potentially it came that way from the factory, or maybe someone adjusted it trying to troubleshoot that no run condition. But either way, it is fixed now, and we have a good running machine. So I hope this video helps someone. Thanks for watching.